Good Guys? Where did they get Good Guys from? I did not work at Good Guys, folks. That was like, that's like a club. I was like, when did I did not work at that club. I'm a little upset about that. A little upset about that. Let's go into this discussion. This is a reimagination of the place at the Corcoran was a little bit more, it had a little bit more of a space to it. There was more, it was more of a school. But because I've had to reimagine it with the AI imagery, this is what I've had to come up with. And I was a lot younger and thinner back then. So this is, say this is the entrance at the Corcoran, hypothetically speaking. Once I was at the Corcoran, actually before I was even at the Corcoran, I had studied at ASIJ, which is American School in Japan, and the only way you could get into that school is that one of your parents had to be at the top ranking position in order for the kids to get into that school specifically. That's a private school that was an international school that wasn't public. It was a private international school. I obviously traveled to Japan from, like, I graduated from ASIJ. I shifted from ASIJ to my college, and I got a scholarship for the Corcoran. This is just referencing the jobs that I had in the past because I find that the government system is incorrect with the information that they have. Thank goodness I have all my documents to prove all the jobs that I've had. By documenting it, this is why AI is good, is because you can now document all the things that you weren't able to document before, which is what I'm doing, is I'm using AI to refer all my work status and clarification on the things that I've done. So this is what you're seeing right now. Okay, so this was the trip going back to Japan, going to the job in the embassy. Okay, so this is like Tokyo, blah, 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 taking a walk into Tokyo. These are AI imagined. They're reimagined, okay? And that's the American Embassy in Japan. Okay, so that's technically what's going on here, is I'm having to recreate my situation. I have it on my resume, and I'll show you. And when I was in the embassy, this is younger me, and I did not have tattoos on the arms. I think the AI kind of misread that. I have tattoos, but they're not visible. You can see in my hand there's a scanner. In 1998, within embassy attire, embassy environments, there was something that was called anthrax. And anthrax was going around the embassies. And when I was working for the embassy, I apprenticed, like summer hire. They had me scanning. You can see a scanner. There's a scanner in my hand. They had me scan for the substance and powder that was actually being distributed in environments before 9/11 actually happened. So I was in the embassy when all this stuff had happened, right? So that's like the whole thing, is there was actually like a beeping, like a magnetized scanner that could actually pick this up. That's what that is. And then went back to school, obviously, did my college. On the summer hire again, I came back to Japan and I worked apprenticed for a designer named Jürgen Lau. This is just a reimagination of what you can do with AI, is if you're having to justify proof of the things that you've done and you don't have like the actual visuals, because we didn't have social media back then or cameras to kind of take photographs of the things that we did. This is another way to repurpose the idea of AI, is that it can actually help you through that process, right? So this is the reimagination of the house, the couture house. There were a lot more things going on. This is just like a semi-makeup kind of situation, but that's more or less the job. And I'll show you on my resume. And in the couture house there, I was the apprentice who was busy organizing the materials and the samples. Then back to school, and then lifeguard, 2000 and 2000. Yeah. So I was at the American Embassy 1998, which was the anthrax time. Jürgen Lell, which was the designer, 1999. And then 2000, lifeguard in Tokyo, US Embassy. So this was like the lifeguard kind of scenario, right? So I did the lifeguarding and the lifeguarding. So this was the last time I actually was in Japan when I did like the jobs. We had very rigorous training. These are just AI images of a description, but we trained very, very hard for those roles for the embassy. And after that, I was in South Africa working for the embassy and stuff, for the consulate, US consulate. The first part of the job in the consulate in South Africa for the US Embassy was shredding classified documents. Clearly, we can't discuss that. Then I was also doing the visa section where I had to analyze the documents to make sure everybody had the paperwork, and I had to approve or decline depending. In Japan, right, this is American school in Japan. This was a private American school that only like the wealthy kids would have to go to or could go to for high school. And then the Corcoran, which was not GW, it was definitely the Corcoran, which was not connected to GW at the beginning. GW only took over in 2014 for the Corcoran. I went into the system and I was like, what is going on here? But half of it just doesn't make any sense. I think when it comes down to updating systems, maybe the system, I have to kind of give the benefit of the doubt, is maybe the system that they had on their side was not accurate, because I know I worked in the embassy and the visa departments, and I know that their documentation and computers are so behind. Their, government does not always upgrade. They don't always upgrade their computer systems that kind of keep the old systems going. And I don't know why they do that. They really should consider like doing something about that problem. So if anybody does not know, before 9/11 occurred in the United States, there was a whole kind of thing going on within history in 1998, maybe a little before, where people were just like sharing, not people, but like people who were trying to do harm to citizens in government buildings. And I was lucky enough to have received the job that was supposed to scan the anthrax. I was not happy with it, but I had no say in the situation. I was a lot younger. This is AI recreating the vision. My hair was actually blonde and I was much thinner, but I did not have tattoos on my arms. So that's, you can see that's obviously AI. But it's giving you a scenario as to what I was doing at the time. This would have been in 1998. 1998, that's what would have happened. 1999, I was in the Couture House in Japan. 2000, lifeguard, US Embassy, Tokyo, Japan. American compound in Roppongi-dori, where the US compound is located. Since it was training for the US Embassy as a lifeguard, passed her 2 exams for the following through the lifeguard as a summer hire. Let's just imagine this was Japan, 1998. Okay, the US Embassy. It sort of looked like this, but it's not really. It was like a long building. It was either Asakusa or Akihabara, one or the other. It was like a 10-minute to 15-minute walk from where I lived, basically, in Japan. Okay. I was studying art, okay, and I had to travel to see my parents in Japan, so I had jobs in Japan because I had to go visit them during the summer. So my dad was a US diplomat. Before, say in 1998, there was no documentation. You couldn't film yourself because we didn't have something like an iPhone back then. It didn't exist. What we had was the manual camera, which you needed to develop the film from another location. We didn't even have the razor. What is it? The Motorola razor. We didn't even have that. That did not exist. That only came out, I think, in 2002, 2003, maybe 2003, I'm not sure. Governments really blotched my work situation when I went into the system. I was like, what is this? These are jobs that I didn't have. I did not work at Good Guys, which is like a club. I was like, there's no way, I was not there. That was like a made up story. So I was in Japan, right? This is American school in Japan. This was a private American school that only like the wealthy kids would have to go to or could go to for high school. And then the Corcoran, which was not GW. It was definitely the Corcoran, which was not connected to GW at the beginning. So there were like a lot of things. There's just like a lot of things that I was kind of like, I went into the system and I was like, what is going on here? But half of it just doesn't make any sense. I think when it comes down to updating systems, maybe the system, I have to kind of give the benefit of the doubt, is maybe the system that they had on their side was not accurate, because I know I worked in the embassy and the visa departments, and I know that their documentation and computers are so behind. Their, government does not always upgrade. They don't always upgrade their computer systems that kind of keep the old systems going. And I don't know why they do that. They really should consider like doing something about that problem. So there's an article, here's my name at the Smithsonian. There's an article, you can see an article. There's my name, Cinta Spector. But this was in South Africa. Art classes, I do art as well. I like to paint my cars. I do like detailed paintings when I feel like it. That's why I also do, and then you have the music performances. So you can see all of the stuff that I've given everybody all the evidence. When you have situations like I've just experienced, like going into your documents through government and the government gets it wrong, then you have to prove to the government that I don't know where they got their details from, but obviously whoever gave them the facts are just so off. It's like, if they really wanted facts, they should really speak to the person with the proof. I've had many, many, many jobs. I'm not just, like, hopefully by the time you reach 47, you have had many jobs. I've been working since I was 17, or even before that, since I was 17. Jackets that I made in the past, okay? So I make clothing as well. I also do photography, so I've taken photographs for people's portfolios, other photographs I've taken, okay? Pieces that I've made. Here's one of the shows we kind of put together. This is old stuff. This is old stuff. But yeah, some of the music you hear is some of the stuff that I did back in the day. The article. Okay, so these are pictures from way back when. Okay. This is the show that I had at the Smithsonian had the article at the Smithsonian. So the article is at the Smithsonian. Okay, car stuff, paintings. Okay. I'm not walking around with my whole portfolio. Old thing, watercolor, oil paints. I don't do those anymore though. It's too much work. The oil paints gets too, and then my music. I have new equipment, but that's my little studio space. So the stuff you hear in the background is the stuff that I've also produced. Okay. I've done a lot. I haven't left anything unturned. I've tried my best to work on all sorts of things, right? Garments that I've made. Okay. This was the fashion house that I had my clothing in South Africa. Yeah. So I've put together shows and bands in the past, okay? So that's another thing that I've done. Like, not everybody in government necessarily travels, right? So that's also another biased approach. They might not know that the person going to the art university happens to be a diplomat's kid. And I didn't like to flaunt it. I didn't think it was necessary that everybody needed to know my own personal history. I came into the United States feeling like I was here as my own independent self, not underneath my family's initiative, but I did have the jobs in the embassy. Okay, so that's, I think that is like the biggest mishap, is that people putting in information that is inaccurate, just assumptions going off of hearsay without knowing the facts. And I think this is why I wanted to get on here, is that I've done many, many things. The only images I don't have are from the embassy times, but I have plenty of job proof, like the things that I've done in South Africa, and the articles that I've had in the United States, and why I might have had them in the United States, and projects and all that stuff. So it goes back to everything, basically. The Goethe Institute. I hear that was a pretty big thing. The Goethe Institute is a German, like it's not government. I think it's German research, like, department of the German embassy. I'm not sure how it works, but they did like lots of performances and stuff. And when I was in South Africa for my master's, we did the show at the Goethe Institute, and before my performance and the shows that I put together with the students or the other people that got together in the music, they didn't have the music kind of worked out in that section in South Africa. So I feel like I opened up that door for other musicians to perform in places like the Goethe Institute, which was kind of pretty awesome at the time. It was not, they usually would have like the paintings on the walls and exhibitions, but the music was never like part of the process. And then they realized the acoustics were really good. So I was like, well, if the acoustics are good, you should probably utilize the space for more stuff.